Last week, I described the paradox of this moment. We are in the long-expected difficult moment, what Dr. Fauci described as a long, cold winter of COVID-19, and a moment of optimism. Vaccines are being distributed across the nation. The challenges remain formidable. This is the front page of the New York Times from Thursday, January 28th. The headline, "Nearly everyone remains at high risk of getting COVID-19. England has been in a national lockdown since January 6th, their third national lockdown since March, as a new COVID-19 variant has emerged in the country. This new strain, spreading throughout the UK, is thought to be 50 to 70% more transmissible than the strain which first appeared last year. Germany, in a national lockdown since December, is planning new travel restrictions for those arriving from countries where new variants of COVID-19 are spreading. China has put two cities, 17 million people, on a 7-day stay-at-home order after about 350 cases were detected near Beijing. So far, 3 distinct variants have been identified from cases in the UK, South Africa, and Brazil. These variants have now reached other nations. As of last week, all 3 have been detected here in the United States. These variants seem to cause a higher rate of transmission. Serious concern is being expressed by our public health experts regarding the South Africa variant. There are some signs that this variant could require additional antibodies, possibly delivered by an additional vaccine dose. We need to know more. There is good news. Nationally, we have seen a drop in new cases and hospitalizations. We are still seeing rising deaths connected to the surge earlier this winter, and it may be some time before we see this number decline. We are still immersed in the most difficult period of the pandemic. Let's put our current numbers into perspective. In August, I shared this slide with all of you at the very beginning of our fall semester. July was regarded at that time as a particularly challenging month, 65,000 cases on July 29th. If we were to recreate a slide today for the month of January, you can see what it looks like. This decline is promising. We are moving in the right direction, but we are still in a very challenging moment. The number of cases we are seeing, 165,000 cases per day on average over the course of this past week, is still 100,000 higher than where we were 6 months ago. We're seeing a new baseline, and we must be extremely mindful of the new, more transmissible variants now beginning to circulate in the United States. Evidence of the challenge of this moment is our experience here at Georgetown over the past week. This has been the most difficult week for us at Georgetown. In the fall semester, we saw about 20 positive cases of COVID-19 in our community each week. Students have been returning for the beginning of the spring semester to our residence halls and surrounding neighborhoods. Some additional students have moved on to campus. Classes for most students began a week ago. Courses with some in-person elements, hybrids, were just beginning. We first saw a rise in cases last Monday, which continued throughout the week. Our response is to put on pause several of the steps we had begun for the start of the spring semester. In-person activities have been greatly limited on our main and medical campuses. Our plans to open some study spaces put on hold while we manage this spread in our community. We'll keep these steps in place for 2 weeks, and we'll reassess at that time. Dr. Renee Mashuri spoke about the work we did to prepare for this moment.
Our unit is tasked with managing all the positive cases that come to our attention in the university's communities. We rely on processes and guidelines from the CDC and from the DC Department of Health. And even with a smaller number of students, it's very intensive. Every individual who is positive has about, on average, 4 or 5 people who need to quarantine. There's still a lot of fear and anxiety. So the mental health component of managing that response is enormous, because even if they don't have symptoms, the fear and anxiety and managing people alone in a room for 10 or 14 days, that takes its toll. This pandemic has shown us that we have to think of ourselves as members of a community, because what each of us does individually has an impact on a large group of people.
Why so many cases? Remember, the virus spreads through aerosols, small air particles. Aerosols stay in the air. We wear masks to catch the virus before it can spread in the air, and we keep distance to ensure that any aerosols that are released can fall to the ground. Distance, the best recommendation, 6 feet, which is why close congregate contact, where air can't circulate, must be avoided. And as I have shared in previous presentations, the virus spreads asymptomatically in 40 to 50% of the cases. The person spreading the virus doesn't have any symptoms and is unaware that they could be spreading the virus. Under these conditions, how could we know if we have the virus? Testing. Our regular testing protocol is essential for detecting asymptomatic cases. Our protocol, 2 times a week if you are on campus regularly, once a week for students off campus, and we had additional tests and quarantine requirements for those traveling back to Washington. A negative test is required 72 hours before travel, and after arrival, either to campus or our local neighborhoods, students quarantine until receiving 2 negative tests. The second test is usually 3 to 5 days after their arrival. We track these cases very closely, reviewing daily information on issues such as positive cases, the number of people in isolation, and test turnaround times. We will revisit our policies and we will revise as we deem appropriate. We will continue to monitor the conditions on our campuses closely. This is the most challenging moment that we have faced. Every one of our public health measures, our layered public health approach, is vital to stopping the spread of the virus. I look forward to being with all of you again next week. Take care of yourselves. Take care of everyone around you. For every Hoya, everywhere.